Well, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a lot of doom and gloom lately, a lot to be upset about, and understandably so. But you know what? It can't just all be doom scrolling. It can't just all be doom scrolling. And today, we're actually going to give you the receipts of why I think America's on the verge of a significant comeback. This is not just vibes. Like, we're going to show you very specific indicators. We've showed you indicators before on what happens when the bad things are happening and what happens next. Well, now we've got some really positive things happening, and the specific things happening don't just bode well for the next year or 2 years or election cycle. It actually bodes well for the next generation. So we're going to be getting into those specifics and showing you exactly what we're talking about in this episode of Making the Argument. I'm your host, Nick Freitas. With me in the studio, my beautiful bride, Tina, Queen of the Bees.
Hello, everyone.
And then, of course, we have our political prognosticator, our resident historian, the Oracle of Virginia, having a real difficult time with doing a positive episode. Not quite sure what to do with himself, but he is smiling. Christian Hines, how you doing, brother?
You know, typically I say, oh man, I'm so excited for this episode, but this is going to be a struggle. No, I'm just kidding. It actually is going to be a good
Christian
episode.
thrives on doom.
Well, look, and I'm going to give you a real quick example right up front of what I'm talking about, because we went over to our good friends at Ground News, who are gracious enough to sponsor this episode. And like numerous church attendance is on the rise, and young people are leading the charge. Trump's new religious policies energize conservative Christians. Trump signs executive order aimed at dismantling the U.S. Department of Education. Right? It's all there, all easy to find. You can go right there and you can see who's covering it. And I got to tell you, sometimes it's a little funny to watch what the left is not covering in this space, because it makes them feel the sads, guys. Right. But it makes us very, very happy. And we're always grateful to Ground News because we can go see who's covering what and why. Now, remember, Ground News is not just an app. It is also a website that curates all the latest stories and provides you with insight into who's covering what. So if, like us, you get a little bit frustrated when you're over there on some of those popular search engines trying to find an article that you know exists and they keep giving you a bunch of biased crap, go to Ground News. And now for just $5 a month, you can check out all of the many features and get unlimited access at ground.news/MTA. In fact, if you go to ground.news/MTA, you're going to get 40% off that Vantage plan, which is the very same one we use in order to prep for our shows and to be able to bring you access to the numerous articles to prove that what we're saying is not just contained up in our minds, but there's actually things going on out there. So ground.news/MTA, and thank them very much for sponsoring this episode. Okay. Now, I want you to imagine something. We're sitting there and I'm explaining to Christian, like, okay, Christian, we've had a ton of episodes talking about Gramsci and communism and the left-wing takeover of academia and education, arts and entertainment, politics, the family. Like, we've talked about all of it. We've talked about the long march to the institutions. We have made the case that the left has done what we say they have done. I said, but I've been noticing something. Over the last several years, and it's really come to light over the last 9 months, right? But it almost seems like there's a little bit of a reversal going on. It almost seems like the long march through the institutions is now being reversed. And what's crazy about that is that if you think about how long it took the left to entrench themselves into Hollywood, academia, media, journalism, all of it, the fact that so much of it is unraveling so quickly is pretty positive. Now, we've talked a lot about the culturally shaping institutions within a society, and that's it. We're going to break it down, just like we told you how the left infiltrated into the family, how the left infiltrated into academia. Now, we're going to talk about what's going on the right. And the first thing we're going to start with is family, and specifically young men. All right, and there's three categories we're going to talk about here. Let's bring up the first article here, talking about 20-year-old white men are now more right-wing than 75-year-old white men. And I'm telling you, that can get pretty right-wing, right? white ring. Someone's gonna clip that. But
Yeah,
no,
this-
it's true. Go ahead and bring up the post here and kind of explain what's going on.
So we've briefly talked about this before in past podcasts. Ezra Klein from the New York Times interviewed a Democrat pollster after the 2024 election. This actually comes from a Democrat consulting firm.
Yeah.
That did this study.
Yeah, so they didn't cook the books and their
If
This is-
anything, they might have cooked it in their favor.
these
right?
are not the results they wanted to
Yeah,
see.
no. And so they had a long conversation about it. This was back in March when they were talking about this.
Yep.
But every few months, this kind of makes the rounds again because we see other pieces of evidence that suggest that this is not a one-off thing. Well, one of the key data points that was discussed on that podcast with Ezra Klein and this Democrat consultant is that this is broken down by age, race, and gender, and political alignment. So there's 4 key points here. The first one is that anything above this chart, again, it's from the Democrat perspective, voted for Harris. Anything below this 50% mark voted for Trump. This is the age bracket down here, right? So it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. The solid line is minority women. The dotted green line is minority men. The solid red line is white women. And the dotted red line is white men.
Yeah.
And so when you look at this group here, these are the 20-year-olds, all of them. And then anything past this is, this right here is 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so one of the crazy things that was brought up is that just 18-year-olds, if you go 19 or older, it's not the case, but 18-year-olds, Trump won an absolute majority of all young men, of all races.
Yeah. Minority,
but
young men. So, and actually, if you look at it, for minority, 18 and younger, Trump won a majority of minority men.
Barely. He got like 51%.
But that would have been unheard of.
Oh, yeah, that would have been totally unheard of. And then, well, what would have also been unheard of is what he did with white young men.
Yeah.
White young men are they're all the way down here, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing more Republican than this group.
Yeah.
18-year-old white men are the most Republican demographic in the entire country.
I want you to imagine. Everyone has somebody in their family, like it was either a grandpa, maybe a great uncle or whatnot, but someone who fought in the war. And they are about as conservative as you. They wear the American flag hat to the Thanksgiving dinner, and they are telling you all about how wonderful this country is and how awesome it is. And they're just talking about the good old days where they used to be out there, fighting commies. And then the 18-year-old walks in the room and is like, "Yeah, Grandpa, you're just not going far enough." Right? That's kind of where we're at. And it's not just the white dudes, right? Majority of minority men, 18, are going more conservative.
To illustrate the shift on all of it, I've got a second post. This one is from Pew Research that I posted during the summer.
Yeah.
And these were 2 polls. One was done in 2023.
Yeah.
And you see 18 to 29-year-old men. This is all men, right?
Yep.
Of all races. They were, 2-1 Democrat. And this year, they're actually the most Republican coalition in the entire country, other than Gen X men.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, when you think about the spread here, I have a feeling this refused might be not in favor of the left. Let's put it like that.
You're probably in that category, in that age group, you're probably more likely to find conservatives that are saying, "I don't want to talk to you." So yeah, but anyways, that again, another demonstration.
The shift here is
it's the massive shift that is taken, but the shift is real. The shift is
real. And you
real.
also, what's interesting? You and I, when we were planning this podcast, you said something I think that's really, really fascinating that we got to dig into a little bit more. And this will actually tee up the next point that we have in our notes as well. You argued, and I agree with you on this, that if young men shift to the right and stay there, eventually young women are going to come around and join them.
Yep.
And you are starting to see that here. Look at the shift with 18 to 29-year-old women. It was R+14.
Yeah.
Whereas men, it was R+44.
Yeah.
So and then the next biggest cohort that shifted to the right is my age bracket, and I'm at the very bottom of that, 30 to 49-year-old men. So under 50-year-old men are shifting hard to the right, and you're seeing, the women over 50 are not, but the women under the age of
Well, no,
30,
over 50 are. It's 30 to
30 to
49-year-old
40,
women
yeah.
shifted.
And this
left.
is noise, basically. And then the
Yeah.
boomers are getting bluer.
Yeah. Nobody
But,
cares.
Zoomer,
wait, let me just break this down real quick. All right. So R plus 44 is a massive shift among 18 and 29-year-old men. But R plus 14 is a massive shift among 18 and 29-year-old women. So for all of you guys out there, 18 to 29, that are thinking, how am I ever going to get married? Women are more liberal than they've ever been. Actually, it's starting to shift the other way. And again, this is my theory on this. And I've said this, I don't know how many different times. And I've had people get mad at me. I've had women get mad at me. I've had men get mad at me. I'm like, look, men are supposed to lead. And you're not always going to be appreciated instantly for the leadership that you provide. But I've said this for a while now. Young men, when they've asked me, Nick, what do we do about this? I'm like, ignore everything feminism is telling you. Ignore everything that this toxic culture is telling you. You embrace biblical masculinity. You embrace strength. You embrace honor. You do all that stuff. And there's going to be people that mock you. There's going to be people that laugh at you. There's going to be women that say you're a misogynist. Doesn't matter. You forge ahead with what you know you're supposed to do because it's right and it's true, and watch what happens. And we're starting to see it happen. And it's not just in politics. It's not just in politics. We got another one here that I think is uniquely encouraging.
So this is religious attendance.
Yeah.
And you see historically it collapsed, right?
Yep.
Those that were born in the 40s were much more likely to attend church services weekly, and it cratered until you got into those that were born in the 80s, right before 1990. It bottomed out for basically people, I would argue, that are halfway between you and I in terms of when they were born. So 5 years younger than you or 5 years older than me. But what you've seen since then, look at what's happened with younger cohorts. It's not a giant recovery, but it has bounced.
Yeah.
And church attendance has grown by about 5%. Now, it's still really low. It's only 25%. But
it
was, in some cases, it was at 20% or even below. And look at the inverse of never attending.
Well, what does this go to, by the way?
This is a Substack that's talking about just...
Yeah, no, but what year does it go to?
Oh, this goes to born up to 2000.
Okay.
Well, a little bit past 2000.
Yeah.
So
close to
that's birth
2005.
year, not
the year that they were born.
Yeah.
And so what's
Well, we
interesting
also-
here is that the most secular demographic is those that were born, again, millennials, those that were born in 1990. Well, the percentage of people who say that they never attend church has dropped for the first time of all these groups, with men, that answer that fewer than women, or less often than women. And the drop off has gone from about 35% to, about 30%. So again, you're seeing on both ends of this.
Well, and I'm also willing to bet.
Shift.
I'm also willing to bet that if you just check in the weeks after Charlie, you see this spike. Now we'll see if it holds. But I can tell you, having been to some of the candlelight vigils, having been to the vigil forum in DC, having watched the one that happened in Arizona, and then watching the subsequent number of people that were saying, I'm going back to church for the first time. And it's not only that, it's people like Richard Dawkins saying, well, I want to live in a Christian culture. It's people like James Lindsay, who used to be one of the he used to be a militant atheist. Not anymore. He doesn't claim Christianity, but he has this very, very deep respect for Christian. We just did an interview with James Lindsay. It's going to be posting next month. And a great deal of respect for Christianity. A lot of the people that used to mock it, that were some of its most public opponents, have now either moderated their tones toward it, or are saying, look, I might not have adopted it for myself, but I recognize the benefits of the good parts of it, or are starting to attend church. You see this with like Carl Benjamin.
I was going to say, I mean, he was his whole life raised as an atheist, and he still identifies as an agnostic. He wouldn't call himself an atheist, but Carl Benjamin goes to church every week now. Yeah. And he's taking it because he has young kids, and he's like, he explicitly said in some of his own videos, he's like, I want my kids to grow up in a Christian country. Yeah. Even if he keeps calling himself a creature of modernity that just can't for some reason bring himself to kind of like fully like, I guess, internalize or believe all this stuff, but he certainly recognizes the positive social benefits of it, and he wants his kids to live in a country that practices it. So, I mean, you're seeing this across the board, not just in the U.S., of course, but That is a huge positive trend. Is that I really think that the new atheist movement has failed utterly at this
Oh,
point.
when you have none other Richard Dawkins saying, "Look, if I may not believe in Jesus, but I want to live in a Christian culture," that is the reason why that is so devastating is because a lot of the other people that may have looked at this or may have thought it was all like clown world or Jesus was nothing but Santa for adults are starting to say, well, wait a second. Why are you saying this now? You were telling me that we should mock, ridicule, and want the death of this, and now you're saying that you like the benefits of it? That's profound. That's profound. There's another category.
There's one more thing that I want to say, and I know that it's not America focused, but it's indicative of what's happening here.
Yeah.
If you look at some of these statistics, this is in the UK. Let me find the number to show you here. Look at this. So specifically, there's an estimate that the number of adults who are church-going Christians that are defined as, attending church at least once a month has surged from 3.7 million in 2018 to 5.8 million in 2024. That's an increase of 56%.
Jeez.
And how many years is that? That's like 6 years?
Yeah.
COVID, I think, really changed a lot. The COVID and the Great Awakening, I think, really changed a lot.
What was crazy is that there was a problem because COVID, they basically artificially shut down church and made it to where people weren't going to church artificially.
Yeah.
And then it was a really big concern because church attendance remained very sluggish after that. But now it has totally surged past that point now.
Well, I think there's a couple things happening with this that are important. One is you have more people looking for they want to build their lives, they want to build their worldview on something that's solid, that's transcendent. They're so tired of this. They feel like the whole idea of secular atheism, and specifically leftist secular atheism, had its chance. It's not like real secular atheism's never been tried. Yeah, it has. It's been tried, overwhelmingly, and nobody's liking the results. And young men especially, they've received no benefits from the result of this little grand social and moral experiment that they've engaged in. And so they're like, look, I'm looking for something true. And it's really encouraging. Because again, when I said earlier, this is not just about stuff that impacts the next election cycle. This is about worldview changing stuff. And whenever you're talking about a worldview change, that's different. That means Overton window shift.
It's about combating a cultural hegemony.
Yes, it's when you
undoing what Gramsci said.
Undoing what Gramsci. When you have an Overton window that essentially says the far right you can go is Mitt Romney, and the most religious you can go is the Sparkle Creed and the Episcopalian Church, and the far left you can go is
there's no limit.
BLM riots and whatever
and transing kids,
right?
Yeah.
When that's the Overton window. When you say, oh, people are becoming more conservative, well, okay, are they just becoming more like Mitt Romney? Like, that doesn't really do it. But when you say, no, there's a 56% uptick in church attendance, and a lot of it is happening among young men, oh, no, that's a drastic Overton window shift that has the potential to take place as a result of it. And again, we're already seeing the beginning stages. And this next one is indicative of this. This next figure is indicative of this. And this has to do with who people voted for president in the last election and what their priorities are. We're going to zoom in for this in a minute.
Yeah, I gotta. Unfortunately, it moves it around when you.
Yeah, we're
okay.
Trying to get
Here it is. Here it is.
Yeah.
This is hard to understand, and so we're gonna have to walk our audience through this. But the results here, and I'm gonna hide this video. The results here are crazy. So this was, these were polls of voters that voted for Trump and Harris.
Yeah.
And particularly Gen Z voters that voted for Trump and Harris. So the youngest cohort. And they asked men and women who voted for Trump and Harris, what were the things that you prioritized the most in your life? For women who voted for Harris, the number one thing that they ranked was being a girl boss, basically.
Yeah.
For men, again, and Gen Z, remember that.
For men
who
who
voted for Trump,
Harris,
it was having children.
Oh, yeah.
Was their number one thing.
Yeah.
That they said was the most important thing in their life.
Yeah.
And, followed by achieving financial independence, having a job or career you can find fulfilling. Being married was number 4, but I mean, this was a long list of 13 things.
Yeah,
fame and influence was dead last for them.
fame and influence was dead last for all 4, but I have a feeling that part of that has to do with it being the right answer. But scroll down again. I want to show
That's
something.
crazy because having children was number 1 for men and number 12 for women.
They highlighted having children and being married for women who voted for Harris, for Zoomer women who voted for Harris. The second to last thing they prioritized was having children. The third to last thing they prioritized was getting married.
So
for men, it was number 1 and number 4.
Yeah, and for women, it was for Trump women, it was number.
Unfortunately, for Trump women,
6,
it was quite low. It was number 6
and number 9, but it was still higher. Okay, why is this so important? Not just for right now. Why this? So first of all, becoming more conservative. I think that a lot of this is a byproduct sometimes of just like the political space and young men feeling alienated by the left and all the institutions that they've dominated. But what do? They don't just change over to become leftists. They start looking for something more fundamental, transcendent, and they're looking at Christianity. They're looking at religion. They're looking at, again, something that they can build from. And then what are their values? The values have changed. That was not always the top value for young men voting for Trump. The top set of values becomes having children. And then if you look at the other things, achieving financial independence, having a job,
these are traditional male-coded things.
And they are, because you think about it. Now, but listen, having enough money to do the things you want to do is 5th. Why? Because if you ask this question, you think about the mindset, it's like, well, I want to have children. I want to have a family. Okay, well, what do I need to do in order to do that? Well, I need to get married. Well, what do I need to do in order to get married? Financial independence and having a job or career, right? Because I need to take care of this family that I'm going to have. So it's not necessarily that this is an order of precedence. It's more about a proper aligning of what I want and the things that I know I need to do in order to get the things that I need to do to have the family. Why is this so important from like a long-term thing? It's important right now because it matters right now when people start their life off with that mindset. When it's not all, I just want to be able to travel and do what I want and be whatever. When it's, nope, I am organizing my life in such a way to where I can get married and have children. Okay. You think about everything you do differently. And the younger you get married and have children, the more focused you are on achieving goals to protect and provide for your family. It's a maturing component. Now, contrast, so right off the bat, that's important because what it predicts is that conservatives are going to get married younger and start having children sooner. But what's also predicted in here is left-wing women are not at all interested in getting married or having kids. So what do? To the extent that they do get married, it's later on. And then to the extent that they do have kids, it's after they've spent tens of thousands of dollars on IVF to have one child. And I'm sorry, like I don't mean to diminish the people that have diligently tried to have kids, right? But I'm talking about this idea is that left has convinced an entire generation of young women who are listening to them on everything else that you can trade away your most fertile years and then just have it later when you're 40, and there's no consequences of that whatsoever.
There are consequences, actually. Look at this.
Yeah.
This is the birth rate among progressives and conservatives. They've both dropped, but conservatives are still above replacement.
Yeah.
Progressives are at below 1.8.
Yeah.
That, like, Blue America... Actually, this is going to feed into a second point that we've got here because we're covering 5 today.
Yeah.
Blue America needs your kids.
Yep.
In order to continue to exist as a political
That's
entity,
why they
because they're not
capture
having
those
their own.
institutions
Well,
is
and they
because
were-
they need them.
And they were relying so heavily. There's a reason why they don't want young women getting married. It's because if you're not married, because you'll also notice when they looked at those things, if you're not married, life is more difficult. Life is more difficult to navigate. And overall, I just mean from sheer providing and things of that nature. What ends up happening is they look for community somewhere else. Because if you don't have community, at least in your family or your church, you still want community. We all still, where do you try to find it? Well, you got to try to find it in your profession, but that's difficult because professions automatically come with hierarchies. And so you can't have the same sort of community that you would have within a friend group. So where do you get it? Well, you get it through activism. You get it through politics. To the extent that you need assistance for the things that you want to do, where do you go? You go to programs. To the extent that you want to promote and you've been convinced that the entire world is against you and patriarchal systems are holding you down, well, you go right back to your activism group because that's what's going to provide you the opportunities to achieve your financial goals. So they've created a system that elevates it. Now, how did they try to make up for the fact that they're not having kids, or to the extent that they're getting pregnant, they're aborting them? Well, what do? You import another population. Well, what happens with the population that you're importing? Well, turns out the majority of minority men, 18, 19, they're now more conservative. What's going to happen? Now, minority women are still very, very liberal, but what's going to happen over time is the minority men become more conservative. The minority women will become more conservative over time. So they can't even rely on that. So now what do they need? They need you to hand your children over to the educational institutions and systems that they control as soon as possible.
So then it's all about early childhood education. And that's the thing is, this has been a multi-pronged approach. It's not like they started with this one thing and now that's not working, so they switched. No. They've been doing all of this the whole time. So they've been co-opting your children this whole time.
Yeah. So look, this is what I mean. This is what they're trying to do. And we're going to talk a little bit later even about the educational front and how the left is having problems there as well. But every indicator that you've just seen here among young men, young women, I mean, it is trending in our direction. And the left knows it. That's why they're flipping out about this. That's why they spent $20 million to have a liberal woman go around the country to talk to men, which meant lecture men on why they should be more liberal. And it ended up failing. And the thing is, you would look at it going, don't you guys understand that you need someone that's actually masculine? And they're like, best we can do is Destiny and Hassan Piker, right? Like it doesn't, guys, they are in so much trouble generationally right now. So much trouble. When I've said before, I said this at Live Action, I said, we could win this in one generation. We could win this in one generation. We have more kids. Get married, have kids, don't hand them off to the government for their education. So here's all I will say, like for the young men out there that have wondered, like, when is this ever going to, it is starting to change. And in large part, it's starting to change because you've decided, I don't care what they say anymore. I'm going to go do what I think is right. I'm going to go chase what I think is true. And that is so powerful.
And they realize that they're not alone. I can tell you I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Well, you got to date somebody, Christian, so.
Dang.
Gosh, dang.
I mean, I'm a total hypocrite on this, right? We're talking about like getting married and stuff like that, and I'm sitting here still single, but that's my fault. I just haven't put in the work. But the point is that I remember when I was in high school and college, and I was developing my political worldview. And no, it was not the worldview that I currently espouse. For those that are wondering, people got to know me on the podcast long after I had ended my libertarian arc. But when I was moving to the right, or discovering the right, so to speak, or at least the libertarian aspect of it, I felt like I was the only one that believed in these type of things. And there's certain views that I haven't changed on, like, sound money, free market, stuff like that. But when I was in college, it was just, constant progressive propaganda 24/7. Everybody was a leftist. Everybody was just openly speaking like everybody was supposed to agree that, you're supposed to be a leftist around whoever is in the room with you. Yeah. And I wasn't. I never was.
Yeah.
I was never a progressive. But you were constantly surrounded by progressives who treated you like you're supposed to be a progressive or else we're going to kick you out of the room.
Yeah.
And so you feel like that you're isolated and alone and that nobody in the world agrees with you on anything. But the one positive side of, the rise of alternative media, and this is actually getting into another point here, is that you now realize that there are other people out there that share your worldview, and it's a lie that everybody's a progressive.
Yep.
You've been fed a particularly cold, You've been fed a narrative that's been cultivated for a specific purpose, which is to get across the idea that everybody's doing this. Yeah. Everybody agrees on this. Yeah. Everybody agrees that men can become women. No, they don't.
Yeah.
No, they don't agree with you.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, a majority of people disagree with you. You are the weirdos. You are the minority on this. Yeah. And we didn't realize that until mainstream media started to die off and you had alternative media like podcasts. Like this show, obviously not just this show, but alternative media replaced mainstream media. I mean, X has become a perfect example of this. Years ago, X was like blue sky.
Yeah.
And now it's more like the broader public. And it turns out the broader public is much more right-wing than people originally thought that it
Yep.
was.
Yeah.
That's crazy because the left is still on X.
Mm-hmm.
They're still
They're
on
just
there.
complaining that
It's
they don't
just-
control it.
The difference is that now you can actually see what the right is saying as well. It's not getting throttled. They're not getting banned. I mean, when Twitter totally banned the president of the United States,
Yeah.
that was
It was
that was a
nuts.
huge indicator of the condition of things. They want their echo chambers, and they can't tolerate anything but those
Yeah.
echo chambers. So that's why they're so upset on X now.
So point one, institution one, the family and specifically young men and their impact on it are on the rise. Like the momentum is totally shifting, which brings me to my next point. Guys, in order to get that wife and get those kids, you're going to need a job. And that's where BRUNT comes in, because you're going to want a job that does manly things, right? And I am now wearing some BRUNT workwear right now. Let me tell you what I mean by this. This is my work boot here. This is my manly work boot. Yeah, I know they're telling me like put it on. That's as high as it goes. That's my manly work boot here. I'm going to tell you what, I actually put these on for the first time today, and the reason why is because BRUNT likes to brag that these work boots feel good from day one. Usually, I've had some good work boots before, but they take a little working in. Nate will back me up on this, right? They take a little working in your work boots when you're out there clearing brush and things like that. These things are flipping awesome. Like, they are super comfortable from the moment you put them on, like no sore, no nothing. I'm wearing the Marin. That's Marin. These boots are tough. They're built for tough jobs, and they are super comfortable. And quite frankly, I am impressed. Not only that, but if you go to BRUNT Workwear, that's BRUNT, bruntworkwear.com/Nick, right? And use code Nick, you're going to get $10 off your order. And they've got a wide array of different foot gear to get tough jobs done. So bruntworkwear.com/Nick, use code Nick, get $10 off your order. Again, I am super impressed thus far. All right. Next part that we're going to talk about actually has to do with the political realm. So we've articulated before about how Gramsci talked about how to take over the political. And within an elected office, obviously that comes from running certain people. It comes from running people for offices that are not necessarily as partisan, and then building a bench. And then so you elect someone to the school board that seems nice, but they're actually pretty radical. Then all of a sudden they're mayor. Then all of a sudden they're a state legislator. Then all of a sudden they're in Congress. Then all of a sudden they're a senator or a governor. And the next thing you know, you're getting inundated with policies that just don't make any sense, that you're wondering, how did this happen? Colorado was the example of how Democrats took a red state that was trending a little bit purple and turned it horribly blue to the point where it's very, very difficult to win an election there. By the way, go check out Victor Marks. He's running for governor in Colorado. Great guy. Now, the other problem that we had was not just that Democrats would take over the government and then run everything as far to the left as possible. They would use every opportunity they had through the power of government, whether through lawfare or through the budget, to fund their friends and to punish their enemies. Right? That's what they were doing. And then what would happen when Republicans would get in? Nothing. They would slow down the progressive march through, the bureaucracy, right? That's all they would do. They would slow it down. Maybe. That is not going on now. Now we actually have a president and a cabinet and some brave members of Congress that are pushing back. And here's the wonderful part. This is the part where we actually realize it's like we didn't have to violate any of our values, right? They did lawfare against us. What is lawfare? Lawfare is when they make up excuses to come after you. The whole 34 felonies, that was because a state legislature did something that is completely outside of the legal tradition in the United States. He deliberately changed the law and the statute of limitations on a particular thing in order to increase the penalty from a misdemeanor to a felony so that they could go after Trump and claim that he was a felon. Funny story. That same Democrat is now arguing that his own bill is unconstitutional. Why? Oh, because someone used it against him. See, there's a difference between illegitimate lawfare and simply enforcing the law. And now we have a president that says, hey, Comey, bad news. You can't do what you did. right? Bad news to some of these actors who decided that they could use their access to government, their security clearances to assure the American people that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian propaganda when we all knew they were lying about it. Bad news to all of the members of the government that were trying to shut down organizations like X or were trying to deplatform conservatives. Bad news. It's not just you lost power. For those of you who broke the law, you're going to have to pay the You get to learn the true meaning of nobody is above the law. It's so fun to watch. But it's not just things like that. Does anybody remember? And maybe we can, I don't know if we got this one up. I remember when the Democrats told us that the reason why people were flooding across the border is because we hadn't passed a bipartisan border security bill that had billions of dollars that had nothing to do with border security. And they did this on purpose because they knew Republicans would vote against it because it was a bogus bill. And then what they were going to do was go to the people and say, oh, now we know who really cares about border security. Democrats had solutions, but conservatives just want the issue. Well, we didn't buy into it. President Trump got elected. And guess what, Christian, Tina, guess what? Without any new piece of legislation, without any new presidential authorities, without any influx of massive amounts of resources that weren't already authorized.
They just enforce the existing law.
Golly gee willikers. It's amazing to see what can happen when you have somebody that is actually willing to wield the power the people have given him. Hey, any other Republicans out there watching this? This is what we call a use case in the proper use of legitimate power to achieve desired end states. You don't have to be afraid of it. Turns out people are super duper excited about what President Trump is doing. He is winning on this issue, not losing on it. Now, we're going to go into some of the reasons why, because that falls into a different category we're going to be talking about. But there's no question. You can look at the illegal crossings along the U.S. border, and you see this. You see all of this major stuff taking place. You see this huge uptick during the Biden years. And then, gosh, what is... Hey, Christian, on this graph, sometimes graphs confuse me. Can you show me what that big spike is and then what happens immediately after it?
Oh, this is called Joe Biden.
Oh, okay. That's the Joe Biden. So these are people, this is U.S. Border Patrol apprehension of migrants crossing the southern border illegally.
Yeah. Now imagine who they didn't apprehend.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, look at it. It just plummeted. It's at its lowest level since 1970. That's
God, wait a second.
50
Christian,
years.
You're telling me we didn't need a massive bipartisan bill which drastically increased spending on things that had nothing to do with the title of the bill?
Well,
Yeah.
what we needed to do was elect somebody who felt like that it wasn't going to serve their political ends to open the floodgates to the entire world to walk into the country illegally.
Whoa.
This was
Right.
intentional.
You know it was
This
really
was
bad
intentional.
Well,
when
wait a second.
under Biden, they were importing more people illegally than our own birth rate in our country.
You mean to tell me that the only way it would be possible for something like that to happen on the degree that it did is that if you had a presidential administration backed up by a Congress that had absolutely no interest whatsoever in stopping the massive flow of illegal migrants into the United States? What could have possibly been their objective? No, this is wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. But it doesn't stop there. Another thing that he did, and this has to do with DC and crime within the cities.
Oh, these are actually related. Look at this headline. 40% of arrests are immigration related.
So Washington, DC. So again, we have a legal tradition and kind of a practical tradition in the United States where we do not use the military to engage in strictly law enforcement operations, except under cases of insurrection or other cases for which, elements can be overwhelmed and it is absolutely necessary. But we call it posse comitatus. We keep law enforcement into the hands of law enforcement, not into the hands of the military. And there's very, very good reasons for this. However, as I said before, there are times the president can invoke the Insurrection Act, or there's times where a mayor or a governor can either deploy their own state National Guard or can request additional federal assistance. But in the case of Washington, D.C., which has had some problems with crime, probably because they keep electing mayors that either don't have a problem with crime or are career criminals themselves, looking at you, Marion Barry, right? And so what they did was Trump said, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the politically oriented violence. I'm tired of occupying the streets inappropriately and just making it look like a cesspool. I'm tired of the fact that kids can't walk to school without being accosted by gang members or drug dealers. And it turns out that Washington, D.C. is not just some independent city state. No, it actually belongs to the federal government. And while the federal government has ceded some control over local issues and allowed them to elect things like a city council and to have a Washington, D.C. police force, those things are still subject to the jurisdiction of the federal government. And Donald Trump said, well, we have another case of a Democrat mayor unwilling to do what's necessary in order to prosecute crime and protect innocent people. So we're going to federalize it. And the hand-wringing, Christian. This was just going to exacerbate the problem. This was going to probably cause more crime. And you know what? It did cause some disturbances. It turns out that white liberals from everywhere but Washington, D.C. immediately came in to protest and to hurl slurs and insults at the National Guardsmen that were augmenting the Washington, D.C. police force. But you know who seemed actually kind of happy about it? People that lived in Washington, D.C., especially in the high crime-ridden areas, they were like, hey, I don't know what this is, but I seem to feel safe in my neighborhood. And once again, what did we illustrate to all of these blue city mayors? Wait a tick. You mean to tell me that if you make law enforcement less about pushing progressive ideological agendas and wokeness, and more about, wait for it, protecting innocent people from violent criminals that are seeking to do them harm, steal from them, hurt them, murder them, the cities get safer? What? No. Oh my gosh. And of course, this has led mayors and governors in blue states, especially Chicago and Illinois, to be like, oh, I can't believe this. This is horrible. The last thing we would want is for Trump to come in here with his brutes and enforce the law. That's crazy talk. Crazy. And in fact, it's unconstitutional because of things like posse comitatus. You can't claim insurrection simply because there's a high murder rate. Do you mean to tell me that simply because that simply because that we were on averaging losing less people a day in Iraq and Afghanistan than we were in Chicago, that you can honestly claim that there's some sort of insurrection here that's gotten away from the local authorities and for which the state authorities seem to have absolutely no stomach to do anything about? And then they brought up a good point, Christian. They brought up a good point. They said, you know what? If you guys are really concerned about this, you'd stop picking on all the crime-ridden blue cities and crime-ridden blue states, and you'd start focusing on the crime-ridden cities in red states, which also happen to be blue cities. Well, like, what about Memphis? And you know what? They're right, Christian. Memphis is a real problem. It has been governed by Democrats pretty much exclusively for decades now. But turns out the governor of Tennessee doesn't mind if you bring in federal resources to assist what has clearly become a problem so big that the city of Memphis either can't deal with it or refuses to deal with it. So do you see what happened there? Trump says, gosh, works so well in D.C., wonder why we don't do this in other places. And Democrats found a whole new appreciation for a constitution that they usually belittle and say was nothing more than the construction of rich white slave owners, and decided that it was once again very cool and the rule, the law of the land, and could not be violated. And they said, well, why don't you focus on these blue cities elsewhere? It's like, great idea. And now they're a little bit terrified. But I will point out, Christian, something happened, because you remember me. I was like, look, even I'm a little bit worried about this idea of the president just sending in troops. You can't just send in troops because of crime. Do you know what the mayor of Chicago did, Christian? This was so convenient. I do so love it when woke mayors can't help themselves. And this guy really can't help himself, because he didn't just say it would be wrong or inappropriate or even unconstitutional for Donald Trump to bring the National Guard into Chicago. No. He decided to push back in a way that only a moron would. He said, we're going to set up ICE-free zones in our city. See, I don't know if you know how the supremacy clause works. But it turns out that when something is the jurisdiction of the federal government actually has the authority, nay, the authority and responsibility to enforce that law. And while you might not have to assist in the enforcement of the law, you know what you can't do, big guy? Yet you can't obstruct it, because that's called obstruction of justice. And so it's almost like you're using the power of your office to openly defy federal law. God, is there a word we use for that sort of thing when somebody openly uses the power that they have at a local level to try to obstruct federal? It's not insurrection talk, is it? Oh, wait a second. I think you've just provided the mechanism whereby Trump can now say, well, if you're going to try to come up with ice-free zones, we're going to use federal authority to be able to come in there and make sure that you can't obstruct federal law. And if that also means that you find yourself in court for obstruction of justice, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Stephen Miller has a tweet that he put out recently. Let me pull it up.
I am down with the snark today.
Here it is. 4 hours ago. Harboring illegal aliens, impeding ICE officers, and obstructing federal law enforcement are all felony crimes. He's correct.
Oh, that is true.
He is right.
That is verifiably true, it turns out. And again, now, see, here's the problem, guys. You still think you're dealing with the yesterday, right? The yesteryears, where you could just simply do this thing and Republicans would be so terrified of not crossing any lines, because imagine what would happen if they did it to us. Well, see, we've lived through enough years of you doing it to us that now we're not so concerned about that. We already know you're going to do it to us. The difference is we're not actually violating the law. We're just simply rigorously enforcing it. And it's not working out so well for you. Yeah. That's not the only thing that is not working out well for the people that are doing this, because it goes beyond just law enforcement or immigration enforcement. It also talks about all of us finding out that, all of this stuff about, I don't know, chemically castrating gender-confused 10-year-olds or surgically altering gender-confused 16-year-olds or letting boys and girls locker rooms because they just woke up that day and decided it was cool. Like, it turns out none of this was organic. It turns out none of this was a result of American civilization waking up one day after a very, very thorough discussion and deciding, yeah, reality doesn't matter. Let's just do this now. That didn't happen. And yet it seemed like it was everywhere. I wonder why it seemed like it was I wonder why it seemed like it was so organized and well-funded, because, gosh, who would possibly think that this would be the thing that you'd want to push unless, of course, you were using somebody else's money?
They were using our money to push it.
Oh, you were using our money. So let me get this straight. You were taxing us, right? You were taking the money that we had earned, and then you were telling us it was to do things like take care of widows and orphans or to build roads or schools. But then what you were doing is you were funneling it onto these NGOs that were run by your friends, and they were taking the money and then they were pushing a whole host of left-wing woke ideology, not just throughout the government and the bureaucracy, but within our universities, within our public school systems, in all kinds of programs, with little websites that they would set up, funded by taxpayer dollars. They did it internationally. And so all of a sudden it seemed everywhere because we were being forced to pay for it. But we're not now. Or at the very least, it's been drastically cut. And it's not just your radical gender ideology. They cut funding for Planned Parenthood out of the budget for 1 year, just one. And Planned Parenthoods are closing down like they're Blockbuster stores. The biggest Planned Parenthood in Texas, gone. Bye-bye now. Turns out murdering children in the womb wasn't as profitable unless you could steal money from your political opposition in order to use it for the purpose. And now that you can't, things aren't working out so well for you, is it? Yeah, it turns out it's not that we had to spend billions of our own dollars in order to combat what you made look like a perfectly organic movement. No. Turns out we just had to stop you stealing from us, and it collapses under its own weight. Wow. Sucks to be you. nice to have a president that is actually going after it. Now, this is one category where I really wish we'd do a whole lot more than we're currently doing, but a win is a win. And even a minor win seems to be something you can't deal with, because not only are all of these crazy little trends, right, on the retreat now, you know what's also happening for the first time in a long time on the national level? Democrats are having a hard time fundraising at previous. Why would that? I know, it's because money's fungible. That's right. When they took billions of tax dollars and gave them to these NGOs to fund woke nonsense, you'd think that would be bad enough. But it turns out that the people working for the universities, working for the school system, working for the NGOs, working for the bureaucracy, they were also taking a portion of that money and putting it right back in to the Democrat politicians that made sure that the money would keep flowing. So you didn't just lose money for all of your little ideological projects. You lost money for your own campaigns. Gosh, I guess you're going to have to go back to raising money the good old-fashioned way by actually convincing people to give it to you, which gets a little bit more difficult when you're not the one wielding power, huh? Yeah. No, I think we could say that across the line on politics, we're finally finding out what it is to have an administration and representatives willing to wield legitimate power in order to make sure that the left can't use our own money to defeat us or our own schools to indoctrinate our children. Yeah, I'm going to say right now, I voted for all of this. Absolutely all of this. Not only that, but to all the other Republicans out there that may be getting cold feet from time to time because you don't like MSNBC saying bad things about you. This is your time. This is your time to retire. Thank you for your service, such as it was, but now's your time to retire, because there's plenty of other people that are watching what's going on right now, and they want more of that, and they're willing to run. And guess what? A lot of the people that showed up to vote for Donald Trump and for everything he's doing right now, they're not Republican voters. Get this through your very, very thick skulls. They're not Republican voters. They're voting for what Trump is doing. Now, if you also would like to display a little of intestinal fortitude and do the same thing in Congress at your state level, I'm sure they would vote for you as well. But if you're going to sit back at a safe distance and just vote the way you think you need to in order to continue to hold your seat and then wait this all out, knowing that, well, eventually the pendulum swings and I don't want to be one of the guys that got caught up in it. No. We'll get rid of you now. We'll get rid of you now. To the people out there, to the elected Republicans that understand what time it is and are actually doing what we actually elected you to do, God bless you. I know there's times where it's difficult. I have friends that serve in the legislature that have been incredibly consistent conservative votes in difficult districts, and they have proven it can be done. And you know what? They deserve every ounce of our support, and they deserve every ounce of our gratitude, because it's not always easy to fight these fights. I don't want to pretend like it is. And anybody that does pretend like it is hasn't lived in one of those districts or hasn't had to actually fight these fights. So when we do have people that are willing to do the right thing, it's not just about getting out the bad ones. It's not just about fighting the left and everything they're trying to do. It's also about showing the appropriate level of appreciation for the people willing to do that fight. And you do that by showing up to make sure they get reelected. All righty. Next one I want to go to. We're going to go through this one kind of quick, but it's important because we've talked a lot about it. And I've had my good friend Gary from Nerdrotic on quite a few times talking about arts and entertainment. When we talk about arts and entertainment, this is a major culturally shaping institution. I see organizations like Netflix trying to push out a whole new series, trying to indoctrinate our children. And what did you see? You saw Elon Musk, who's not exactly a hardcore social conservative, but everyone's tired of the crap being targeted at our kids. Coming out, leading a charge to time to get rid of it. And again, here's the nice thing. It's not like you have to cancel it forever. You have to cancel it until they learn their lesson. But they need to learn the lesson. Because here's the great part. If you want another instance, if you want maybe, I'm going to give you two poster child examples of how the woke can't win when they can't steal from you to win. They can't just take over the institution and get you to believe whatever you want. I'll give you two examples of this that proves my point. Star Wars and Marvel. You could throw in DC as well if you wanted for a third. Star Wars was easily one of the most beloved IPs, intellectual properties, in all of Hollywood. It had one of the most consistent cross-generational fan bases ever, and they killed it. They killed it. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the deal. They didn't want to kill it. This is really important to understand here. Please bear with me. They didn't want to kill it. They wanted to hijack it to try to get you to believe what they wanted you to believe about reality. And they even had buy-in from some of the biggest stars. I mean, Mark Hamill was all about it. Luke Skywalker got up there and became a caricature of himself to bow at the knee of wokeness. He bent the knee. They tried. Oh, they tried so hard. They tried so hard. And guess what? Ratings plummeted. They tried the same thing with the Marvels. They tried to girl boss their way, and they girl boss just a little bit too close to the sun. And they turned what used to be franchises that produced billion-dollar movies, and they couldn't even break even on some of these. Now, does this mean that nobody wants good storytelling anymore? Does this mean nobody wants to go to the movies? Does this mean that nobody? No, quite the opposite. Tom Cruise puts out a remake of Top Gun, and it does great. You see movies out there that, at the very least, just don't insult your values, and they do fine. But you see movies coming out now that actually cherish your values, and they have the ability to crush it. I'm going to tell you right now, I just don't go to the movies much anymore because they're producing crap. Does that mean I never watch anything for entertainment? No, here's the deal. I don't watch your liberal woke movie. You know what I do? I go to YouTube and I turn on Gary at Nerdrotic or Critical Drinker or Disparu or one of the others, and I watch them take down your movie, and I watch that for fun, for entertainment, and for information. I have a blast. And I didn't have to pay $20 for a movie ticket and $14 for 5 cents worth of popcorn. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. The old Hollywood stranglehold over arts and entertainment, yeah, that's going away real quick. Go back and watch the episode I did with Gary where we talked about this, where he talked about how there has never been a better time for people that actually have a genuine love of writing, whether it's screenplays or books or nonfiction or fiction or fantasy or whatever it is. There has never been a more opportune time. The woke went out there. They tried to hijack Star Wars. They tried to hijack Marvel. They tried to hijack all of the things that were cultural icons in the United States, and they killed it rather than hijacking. They killed the host. And now there has never been another time, a better time for a new generation of creators to come out and to start to fill that gap back with good storytelling, good writing, good acting, the sort of stuff that elevates beauty and honor and nobility. All of it, it's right there. There's never been a better time. And people are hungry for it. And the more hungry they get for it, two things are going to happen. One, we're going to continue to see this rise of alternative media, not just in journalism. Because can we just admit something right now? Old journalism, I couldn't care less. They were talking the other day about how, they looked at all the four big news networks, didn't carry any stories about a Democrat attorney general candidate wishing death on toddlers. One gave 63 seconds to it. The other gave nothing to it. And guess what? I don't care. Typically I would have been super mad. I can't believe they did that. But you know what I realized? Who's watching them? I'll tell you who's watching them. It's not that nobody's watching them. People are watching that wouldn't care if a candidate threatened to murder toddlers in order to achieve their political objectives. But the people who do care just don't get their news there anymore. They get it through social media. They get it through people that are actually willing to enter into a marketplace of ideas and discuss and to debate and to share facts. And sometimes we disagree. Sometimes the same side disagrees. But now you actually have a marketplace for ideas, not a gulag, where you're all commanded to say the same thing no matter what or else. So all those other major networks, can I just say this? Thank you for not sharing the story about Jay Jones, because all it's doing is furthering your own demise because you refuse to get it. And so the more you behave the way you always have, the quicker your networks will die. And good riddance. Good riddance. But on top of that, I cannot tell you how excited I am. Every time I go to one of these conservative conferences where you have a bunch of students there, they will come up and they will talk in. it used to be, how do I run for office or how do I get involved politically? And that's great. That's great. We need people to be able to do that. But I'm seeing more and more young people going, I have this screenplay I've been working on, or I have this, fantasy story I'm writing where I'm really digging in, and I'm working on the lore and I'm working on the languages. And these kids are saying they're not following the woke Disney version of this. They're going back to Tolkien. And they're saying, what did he do and why did it work? And how can I do that for another generation that honors that kind of tradition? And that's just super exciting. That's just super exciting. Because the things that we use to entertain us also inform us on how we see the world. And the left understood that. They just killed the host. It doesn't mean that environment is not still important and worth fighting for. It is. It's just now we have all new tools to fight for it, and we have a deficit of quality entertainment, begging to be filled. The last one I want to talk about here is education. Now, anybody that knows me knows this is near and dear to my heart for a variety of reasons. I've served on the education committee. I was the subcommittee chairman for the Committee on Higher Education within the Virginia House of Delegates. I am a homeschool advocate. I am a school choice advocate. I have repeatedly said that if there's one piece of legislation, one change I could impact within the government, it would be to do far more to empower parents rather than government systems when it comes to education. Why? Well, because as someone I truly admire, Vodi Bakum, once said, you cannot hand your kids over to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans, except in this case, we're handing them over to the woke and being surprised when they come home woke, which is so much worse than being a Roman, if we're being honest. And this is one area where the left still does have a tremendous amount of control. We would be lying. We'd be fooling ourselves if we didn't acknowledge that. We would be fooling ourselves if we didn't acknowledge that we still have a lot of people that refuse to understand just how bad it has gotten, not simply in higher education, but in their kids' public elementary school. Yes, in your nice rural red county. Why? Because the bottom line is the people cranking out the curriculum, cranking out the guidelines, and quite frankly, cranking out the teachers' degrees are all coming from the most woke elements of a university system that is already overwhelmingly woke. Do you understand that no matter how good your teacher wants to be, he probably had to get a teaching credential from an institution that was the most woke within an institution that is the most woke within our society right now. That's the reality. But people are starting to recognize, you know what? I don't think I need to go in tens of thousands of dollars into debt for a college degree that's not going to get me a good job. You know what? I don't got to put up with a college program that forces me to pay for indoctrination that has nothing to do with my major. You know what? I don't have to put up, as a parent, I don't have to put up with a school system that is going to indoctrinate my children and teach them to hate my faith, hate their country, and ultimately hate what body they were born in. I don't got to put up with that. Because there are resources, there are networks, there are communities like never before that want you to win, that are rooting for you. Christian said it best when it came to young men realizing, my gosh, I'm not alone. Guess what, parents? You are not alone. Tina and I are going to be speaking at great homeschool conventions. We're going to be in Texas, Ohio, South Carolina, California. We're going to all of them. And we're going to try to do even more. We're going to be at the Home Educators of Virginia conference here, HEAV, in Virginia next year as well. We want to make sure that parents understand if you are looking for resources, they are there. If you are looking for communities, they are there. I promise you they are. I promise you they are. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that people know about them, know where to find them. Because I got to tell you something. This has been so encouraging for me. When I show up to a great homeschool convention, it is not just about curriculum opportunities or different teaching methods. It's about finding your people. It's about realizing how truly not alone you are. And you will never find, there are two communities that I always say this. There are two communities that you will never find people that are so willing to share with you their triumphs and their failures and are so eager for you to be successful. They're not competing with you. They're not competing with you. They want you to win. It's the homesteader community and the homeschool community. And you'd be shocked at how much those overlapped. Actually, you probably wouldn't be shocked. We're going to the Homesteaders Conference here in Virginia in Warren County this Friday and Saturday. And every time I go there, I will stand out there for 8 hours and I will just talk to people the entire day. And I feel rejuvenated at the end of it. That's how a great homeschool convention feels as well. Go check them out. Because this is the one area where they still have some degree of control. This is the one area where a lot of conservative minded, a lot of Christian minded parents, they haven't seen it yet. To the degree that they need to, or they have, and they feel helpless. They don't know what to do about it. They're trying to get involved politically. They're running for school board. They're doing all of those things, but they're still fighting against an institution which has over 100 years of entrenchment. That really is. Go look back all the way back to John Dewey and beyond. 100 years of entrenchment, and that's a lot to fight against. And your kids don't have a ton of time. So education is the one area where I am so encouraged by the growth of homeschooling, by the growth of educational opportunities, by the growth of states that are trying to empower parents instead of government institutions to allow them to choose the best ways to educate their children. I'm excited by all of it. But this is one area where we really need to pick it up. We need to pick it up and the reason why, hear me out. This goes back into why I'm so encouraged. It's because the growth in this area is exponential in a way that it just isn't in the others. There's a lot we can do in those areas of politics and the areas of arts and entertainment and the media. But a lot of that takes a lot more time than this does. When we start once again taking responsibility for our children's education and raising them in the way that they should go, the exponential benefits are insane. Not just with respect to what they learn or what they believe or their ability to defend it, their ability to stand up against ridicule and accusations and slurs and hyperbolic rhetoric that gets used against them. They're prepared for it. They feel strong in it. It's not just mom and dad's belief, it's their belief. But in the relationship you get to have with your kids, can I just tell you this right now? Please, I think one of the greatest compliments that all three of our kids have given to Tina is that when you ask all of our kids what they wanted to do with their lives, before they talk about professional ambitions, before they talk about travel or some sort of goal that they want, they will always talk about, I want to get married, I want to have kids, I want to homeschool. What they've just said in that moment is, I want to replicate the childhood our parents, and I'm giving Tina the majority of the credit of this, my mom gave to us. Do you know how powerful that is? You end up, do siblings fight? Yeah. But man, they have a relationship with each other that I envy with my own brothers and sisters. We have a relationship with them that is so strong. And I chalk so much of that, not just into what we told them, but the fact that we once again took ownership of the idea that while we can delegate authority to educate our children, and we delegated authority to experts in certain areas for which we did not have appropriate subject matter expertise, but we made sure we knew who the experts were. And we never surrendered responsibility for educating our children or for maintaining that position in their lives as primary educators. Never. And the benefits of that alone are so incredible. Anyway, before we move on to the conclusion here, I do want to say a big thank you to a new sponsor to the show, and that is Lear Capital. As we talk about everything going forward, and we talk about the fights that we still have yet to make, one of the things we've talked about so much on this podcast that is a problem that we got to solve politically, and it's really difficult, and that's monetary policy, because broken money leads to broken economics, leads to broken societies. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's out of our immediate control. But one of the things that you can do is ensure your own financial stability for you and for your family. Now, one of the reasons why we chose to go with Lear Capital is because of the emphasis they put on two things: education and physical possession, right? So if you're looking to say, hey, I want to look at my 401k, I want to know that if something ever happened, I got something that I could walk right over to the safe. I could walk right over to underneath the mattress, and I could grab something that isn't just Federal Reserve notes. I could grab something that has tangible value, that has intrinsic value, and has had value for millennia. I could grab that gold. I could grab that silver. Lear Capital is the place to go. So here's where I want you to just check it out. Dial 800-707-4575 or visit nickforlear.com. That's 800-707-4575 or visit nickforlear.com, right? And just ask them to send you the educational stuff. Ask you some of the stuff. I had no idea some of the things that you could do with 401ks. I had no idea how easy it was to do some of the physical possession. I was always like, do I buy gold stock or what do I? They make it all very, very easy to understand. So go check them out. And once again, we're very, very grateful for them sponsoring the show. All right, let's move in to kind of our final analysis here. Now, I think kind of what I've been doing for the last 30 minutes since I've been kind of dominating this conversation here, I've been trying to make the case.
Conversation. It's a monologue. No.
I am making the case. I am making the argument.
I'm such a hypocrite for attacking you for saying it's a monologue.
No, but for the last 3 weeks, I was struggling with a lot of things, a lot of frustrations. By the same token, I was encouraged by some of the things that I was seeing, some of the reactions I was seeing. I was being as encouraged by the right's reaction as I was discouraged by the left's reaction. But then one day I kind of woke up and I realized, yeah, their crap isn't working the way it used to. Something's changed. It's not that our own side doesn't still look at some of these issues and is willing to debate it and talk about it. We're just not willing to debate or talk about it with people that we know hate us. Because why waste the time? We're going to focus on the things we need to do. And we don't need to waste time on people that have no interest in peacefully coexisting with us.
Unless you want to troll them on X like Christian does. Trolling,
fun.
we always have time for trolling.
But I'm excited. I am truly excited. I think things I have, since this whole kind of woke battle has started, I have never been more encouraged that people recognize it for what it is, feel like they have some idea of what they need to do about it, and are now doing it. I'm excited. Christian, I'll let you give your analysis, and then we'll go to Tina.
I mean, you're more excited than I am, clearly.
That's always true.
No, I mean,
if Lear were to walk in, if Lear Capital were walking right now and hand us each a bar of gold, I would be like, that's awesome. And Christian would be like, it's kind of heavy.
oh no, I'd be very excited about that. Have you seen the price of gold lately?
Yeah.
Across 4,000. It's stuff like that actually makes me pessimistic, is that we have not done, and we can't do anything to fix the fiscal trajectory. And when it blows up, we'll probably end up being blamed for it because we're in charge.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's not what you're supposed to be. Give us the positive here, Christian.
That was
Come
the
on.
positive. No,
Aw.
you don't want to know what the negative is. No, okay. So, I mean, I think back like this. I remember in about 2013, I was in my, I guess, second year of college.
Yeah.
Obama had just gotten elected, and I'll use one example. And there was a mainstream debate in the Republican Party for amnesty and a pathway to citizenship.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about, there's a conversation on the right now about denaturalization and remigration.
Yeah.
Right? And
I came here legally. Yes, but that was a mistake. That's essentially
like,
what that
seriously,
is.
I mean, you have people on the right that are like, why does somebody like Zohran Mondami belong in this country?
Mhm.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't share any of our values. He wants to subvert this country. Why are we just going to let him become mayor? He shouldn't even be here. Same thing with Ilhan Omar. And
Yeah.
so, like, that's the type of conversation that's taking place on the right. And I don't think that the left is ready for when you have generational turnover for elected officials
Yeah.
that want to do that type of stuff. Right now, you only have like one or two people that are elected, but you know, politicians are always way downstream, in terms of a generation or two
Mhm.
downstream of what their voting base wants.
Yeah.
And the right as a whole, I think, has kind of, I was going to say reawakened. They're going to be accused of being woke, right? But like the right, I think, is rediscovered their own kind of moral compass. They've just rejected that. I mean, I'm going to use the term that I use all the time, but like they've rejected the left's metaphysics.
Yeah.
And
Everyone take a drink.
incredible things are possible when that happens, when you stop engaging on, the ground that they've established.
Yeah.
That guarantees that you lose every single time. Like if you
Mhm.
just say, no, I don't even accept the premise of where you're coming from. And
Yeah.
I don't think that there's anything to be gained from talking or negotiating with you. I'm just going to beat you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to beat you. And we haven't quite gotten there. That's why I'm not nearly as optimistic as Nick, because I think that we have so much further to go. But I'm seeing it organically appearing on the right. You know,
In
the
ways
online
that-
stuff is just an example. I know that they say that the internet is not real life, but increasingly it is.
Mhm.
And increasingly there's people on the right that are just saying, I don't care what these people have to say. I
Mhm.
just want to defeat them.
Mhm.
Now we need to get politicians in that will do it,
Yeah.
because that's the difference between the left is a knob and the right is a switch. So the left will dial up the temperature. Everybody's talking about the temperature nowadays, right?
Mhm.
The left will dial up the temperature. They will protest, they will riot, and they will keep dialing it up until they start committing acts of violence. They will start shooting at you. They will start cheering for your murder. They will start sending text messages about how they want to kill your children,
Yeah.
like in the case of their nominee for attorney general here in Virginia, right? They will do that type of stuff. The right is an on-off switch. They will sit there on off mode for years, decades, saying,
Mhm.
I just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
But eventually something snaps and the switch goes on and they say, you know what? I'm not going to leave you alone anymore.
Mm.
Now it's time for us to not leave them alone.
Mhm.
And they're not going to like it when we don't leave them alone. And we're starting to see it, right? We're getting them fired when they're going out there cheering for Charlie Kirk's murder.
Yeah, you've been especially effective at this, Christian.
I'm seeing like elected Democrats at the local level. And a lot of this stuff starts at the local level. I'm seeing elected Democrats that are saying things like, I won't be intimidated. You should be intimidated. When you're going out there and broadcasting that you're voting for Jay Jones for Attorney General, you should be intimidated. You should be humiliated and you should be driven out of public life. And you're starting to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using one example here being the Jay Jones saga because this is what's just absolutely in the news right now in Virginia. But you're seeing the same thing in the university system. No, you should be driven out of polite society if you're trying to normalize transgenderism in the public school system, in the university system. We did a podcast a few weeks ago where we talked about, it was Herbert Marcuse's repressive tolerance.
Yeah.
And him saying, you know, that basically tolerance needs to be withheld from the right and granted to the left indefinitely. We need to do the exact same thing in reverse. We need to withdraw tolerance from the left wherever it exists. And we need to fire them, humiliate them, cancel them, drive them out of polite society and make it de facto illegal to be a leftist. And you're starting to see it in the sense that people are walking away from left-wing institutions. They're defunding left-wing institutions. They're no longer treating the left like they have any sort of moral legitimacy. We are returning the favor of decades of them doing this to us. And it feels good.
All right, Tina.
I think that, you know, what we have seen, just as a quick recap, is the gatekeepers of success in all of these different areas have lost their power.
Mm-hmm.
So in the media, the gatekeepers have lost their power. Everyone's all about alternative media now. They are rendering themselves obsolete. That type of journalism, that type of, you know, in Hollywood, there were gatekeepers that barred you from having your creative ideas listened to. You had to be a part of all of these, you know, guilds and unions and things like that in order to gain some legitimacy, just to get someone to hear your great ideas. Well, you know, technology has, you know, as terrible as social media has been in some areas, and as terrible as things like YouTube and things like that have been in some areas, they have been an incredible tool at rendering the gatekeepers useless.
Yeah.
They can't stop you. It's like they're kryptonite. When people have a choice, that is kryptonite to the gatekeepers. And so the same thing is happening in education. The same thing is happening in higher ed. The same thing is happening with creative outlets. So what we are seeing, and there's an analogy. I'm big on analogies. Nick doesn't use them as often, but I do. And, you know, when you guys see those icebergs, you know, the glaciers, that something happens and they've come to a point where what's beneath is more buoyant than what's above, and they shift and it flips. I feel like that's what we are seeing right now in our society, is an absolute flip, and the power has shifted, and it's not just political power. Political power sometimes trails behind society, but I feel like culturally we are seeing this seismic shift, and we are going to start to see the alternative become more mainstream again as the left chips away at itself. I mean, we're outbreeding them, we're outthinking them, we are out, we're showing them what success looks like when it's not being funded by your tax dollars. You know, so when people actually have a choice, we win. And that's what we're learning. And I'm excited to see it going forward. That's not to say we won't see some setbacks.
Mhm.
It's not to say that everything's going to be smooth sailing. It never is, right? It's just the human condition. But I like what I'm seeing going forward.
I do too. I do too. What do you guys think of happy episodes? This is, I've had a good time. I just think this is really encouraging. And again, it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of work to go forward, but I feel like the work is not only manageable, it's not only identifiable, but in many respects, it's fun. Like, I'm excited to see, like, I love the fact that we're seeing more young men saying, I want to be an honorable man, and I'm going to church to try to figure out what that looks like. Now, to churches, what sort of men are they going to find when they walk in? Right? That's part of the work, right? That's part of the work. But it's, again, I think it's just achievable. I was at University of Alabama, and I got to speak to 2 fraternities before I went on the main stage, and the questions I got were really encouraging, really encouraging. Sometimes you can tell a lot of an event not by the answers that are given, but by the questions that are asked, because it tells you what's really on people's minds. And I think there's a chance not just for something of a reconquista in the United States. I think there's a lot of chance for revival, and that's what gives me the most hope. I want to thank again today's sponsor for this episode, Ground News. Again, use my link, ground.news/MTA. Get 40% off that Vantage plan that helps us so much when we're putting together these episodes. And by doing that, you also help us. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. And we are about to go into postgame. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't end when we sign off right now. We just go into the postgame with our community. If you are interested in being a part of that community, because if you think we are snarky, a little bit sarcastic, if you think Tina burns things down when we're live on YouTube, you should see it when we go into postgame. All right. So go ahead and check out the link in the description. We'd love to have some more people join our community where you will find your people. Once again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next episode.